Hey guys, what's up? It's Coleggio. Today I wanted to talk about Iran. Now, the news media is reporting that the Trump administration has no plan, no clear objectives for its intervention, but words in foreign policy matter, and I want to give an ultra-realist take on what the Trump administration's true objectives are and why those true objectives just may not square exactly with their public messaging on the topic. But first, I do want to get into a little bit of history of Iran because there's a lot of things that have gone on in the last 40, 45 years in Iran that I believe are underappreciated and underreported by the media. Now, if you start in 1979, you can make the case that Iran has been literally the most destabilizing force in the world since 1979. Okay, 1979 was when the clerics, the Shiite Muslim clerics, took the government over in a revolution from the Shah of Iran, the former king who was pro-West. They came in, formed a Shiite mullah theocracy that was rigidly anti-West, and they began tweaking their enemies, any regime near them that tilted West or was pro-West in any way. They would do this both conventionally, through conventional means, and also unconventionally through paramilitaries and terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and so on and so forth. So if you start in 1979, you see that their relationship with the Saudis immediately soured. And that's because the Saudis were aligned with the United States. Now, they weren't a Western country, but they were aligned with the West militarily, and they started souring that relationship with Saudi Arabia. Because they were funding terrorist groups like Hezbollah, they began getting involved in Lebanon. Lebanon and the Hezbollah guerrillas in Lebanon have been at war with the Israelis since the early 1980s. The Hezbollah militants bombed the U.S. Embassy in 1983. They bombed the Marine barracks, killed more than 300 people. You can make the case that Iran is at least partially responsible for the civil war in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, and even in Yemen, okay? Wherever there's an opportunity to destabilize, especially by tweaking a country that might even be a little bit pro-Western, they are there, they are instigating it. And critically here is also the Israel angle. I mentioned Hezbollah because Hezbollah, which is kind of stationed in southwestern Syria and southern Lebanon and has been, since the early 1980s, has basically been continuously at war with Israel, okay? All throughout the 1980s, in 2006, they made an incursion into Israeli territory, kidnapped soldiers. That created a 2-month major conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So these types of conflicts have been going on nonstop. Most recently, Iran has been funding Hamas, which of course, the terrorist group based out of Palestinian territories in Gaza. And the involvement of Iran with Hamas and Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th of 2023 is basically the cause of the current conflict between Israel and Iran. There was no way for these two governments to coexist because Iran was doing everything that it could to undermine any type of peace deal that Iran was making with its neighbors. Now, this is important because out of this instability in the Middle East that was created by Iran, that was just objectively caused by Iranian interference in all of these different areas, President Obama, the United States, and European nations designed a peace accord, not a peace accord, but an agreement for Iran to get rid of its nuclear program. Everybody talks about the nuclear program. Iran had been pursuing a nuclear program basically as a deterrent, as a deterrent against any kind of Western involvement in their neighborhood. Basically, the peace deal was going to lay up on all kinds of sanctions if Iran let up on its nuclear program. Iran embraced this. The Arab countries in the Middle East were like, what on earth is going on? Israel, of course, was deeply skeptical. And this actually caused a major rift in the Arab world, okay? Because it wasn't terrible on its face to try to cut a deal with the Iranians. The question was, could you really trust a deal with this specific Iranian regime, which was so inexorably linked to terrorism and to the existence, to opposing the existence of Israel and any Western involvement in that region, okay? So the Arab countries in that region at this time begin to start seeing Iran as more of a threat than Israel. And this caused a split between the newer, wealthier Gulf countries that have kind of been on the ascendancy and the older kind of hardline, old school Arab countries that had been at war with Israel in times past and who really were more fundamentally in disagreement with the existence of Israel. A lot of these countries in the Gulf, I think, we're coming to the conclusion that they may not like Israel, they may feel terrible about the Palestinians being displaced, but they fought wars over this. 1956, 1948, 1967, 1973, and on and on and on and on. Israel was not going anywhere. They're not going to remove Israel from the map. The best thing to do is to get past it, to move forward, and to try to chart some kind of peaceful way forward. That was the attitude of many of the countries in the Gulf. Now, Donald Trump was elected in this moment in 2016. He looked at the Iran nuclear deal, immediately tore it up, didn't think it was worth the paper that it was written on, and he tilted from Iran back to the Gulf countries because he saw a unique opportunity here where the Gulf countries may actually start being able to ally with Israel against a bigger common threat, which was Iran. This was remarkable. Trump had a diplomatic team led by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and by 2020, they unveiled the Abraham Accords, which were a series of agreements between Arab nations and Israel in an effort to get to some type of peace agreement. Remarkably, this was led by both the Trump administration and a couple of very prominent Gulf leaders, Mohammed bin Zayed in the UAE and Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, in Saudi Arabia. This was an extraordinary opportunity, and Saudi Arabia, which is the cradle of Islam, was actually on the path to sign the Abraham Accords in 2023, but Hamas attacked Israel, making those negotiations completely impossible at that point. Okay, so Trump gets elected into this. He brings the Arabs, the Gulf Arab countries together in peace with Israel. Morocco and Sudan signed the accords. Others are on the fence on it, and that is the background for what Trump is trying to do, because he sees an opportunity to remove and replace this regime with another one that's not hostile to the West. And if he could do that, it would be absolutely world-changing. So for Donald Trump, this is a moonshot opportunity that he was presented with by the Israeli invasion of Iran. Okay? Israel was going to invade Iran. They were going to bomb Iran. It was the next step on their list. They had to do it. Iran is funding Hezbollah. They're funding Hamas. They went to war with Hamas. They went to war with Hezbollah. Now they're going to war with their funder. Trump is presented with an opportunity to aid in that effort. The CIA had intelligence. They knew where the Ayatollah was, and they were able to go in there with ships and missiles and aircraft and bomb and kill this government. Okay, so it's a moonshot opportunity. If you look at all of this history and you think for a second of what the world would be like, maybe not with a pro-Western Iran, but just an Iran that's neutral, that's not completely hostile toward Israel or Western interests, one that might, like the UAE or Saudi Arabia, eventually sign the Abraham Accords. You could have peace in the Middle East. Syria, which is now tilted toward Saudi Arabia, could sign the Abraham Accords. Lebanon would no longer have Hezbollah funded by Iran. That funding would dry up. You could see peace coming to Lebanon, and eventually even Lebanon, the last of Israel's neighbors, signing a peace accord with Israel. The possibility, and then with that point, with that having happened, all of a sudden the whole dynamics of the region would shift. And everything wouldn't be about conflict and hostilities. You could eventually have people talking about education, you'd be talking about healthcare, be talking about reforming their economies, and a new age, or like I don't want to be Pollyanna about this, but were that regime to go away, you could usher in a whole new age of peace and prosperity to that region, which hasn't enjoyed it in hundreds of years, okay? That's the moonshot opportunity that Trump sees. Now, is it possible? Well, in my last video, I talked about how this isn't easy, all right? There's no way, conceivably, that the United States and Israel could launch a ground invasion of Iran and actually change their government. That has to be done by the Iranian people. Now, Israel is a little bit more hardline than the United States. They want an end to the mullah government entirely. It looks like Trump just wants a government that's less extreme, but we don't know. We don't know for certain. Trump is a poker player. They may have plans to completely remove this regime through the military. But what's most important here is for the Iranian people to rise up and do this work on their own, because that's the only way that an enduring replacement government can take over, is if the people rise up and replace that government with something new. So it's a moonshot opportunity. The upside is huge. It reflects Trump as being an opportunist. I call him an opportunist realist. He was presented with an opportunity to use military force in a way that could potentially change the world. He took it because he likes to take big decisions and he's not afraid of risk, but we'll see if it works out. Right now, it's hard to say. We're still very, very early in the game. We haven't seen super mass demonstrations in Iran, but if those start, you could conceivably see a path toward the end of the current regime. So that's my ultra-realist take. Would love to know what you think. Drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for joining.